They say love is blind. But no one warns you that betrayal wears a tailored suit and says all the right things. When I met Nathan, I thought I'd finally won. After years of failed dates, broken promises, and a childhood filled with watching my mother cry over a man who never stayed, I believed Nathan was different. He was successful, charming, the kind of man who made the room fall silent when he walked in, but smiled like he only saw me. We met at a charity gala in Atlanta. I was working behind the scenes, coordinating floral displays and managing the kitchen chaos. He was the guest of honor. Our paths crossed when I nearly dropped an entire tray of wine glasses, and he caught one midair like some kind of hero out of a movie. Our eyes locked, and I swear it felt like the universe held its breath. 2 weeks later, he showed up at my office with flowers and a handwritten letter. A month after that, he was taking me on weekend trips to the coast, planning dinners where he asked more about my heart than my hobbies. 6 months in, he dropped to one knee in front of my childhood home, asked me to marry him, and told my mother he'd protect me for the rest of his life. I believed him. I gave up everything to be with him. I left my job, moved into his stunning estate, and started building a life I thought we'd share forever. He was my home, my anchor, my dream come true. Until one morning it all cracked open. A courier dropped off a thick envelope addressed to me. I thought it was something related to the nonprofit I'd been trying to launch. But when I opened it, my hands began to shake. Inside were legal documents, a contract, a prenuptial agreement I had no memory of signing. At the top of the second page in bold letters, Clause 17, terms of contractual obligation to be married for a period of 3 years. I read it twice. 3 times. I flipped through pages filled with legal jargon and cold instructions. Signatures. His, mine, witnesses. All official. All notarized. But I had never signed that paper. At least, not knowingly. The world tilted beneath me. My heart thudded like it was trying to escape my chest. I tore through our drawers, our cabinets, our home office, looking for anything that could prove it was fake. A forgery. A misunderstanding. There was nothing. I waited until he came home. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I simply held the document in my hand and said one word. Why? Nathan didn't even flinch. He looked tired. Detached. He walked past me like I hadn't just held our entire marriage in my trembling hands. You weren't supposed to find that, he muttered, pouring himself a drink. I asked again. Why? What is this? Is our marriage? Is this even real? He looked me in the eye and said the 7 words that broke me in half. It started out as a business agreement. My breath caught. My knees buckled. He sat down on the edge of the couch and said it like it was nothing. My family needed me to look stable for investors. They thought marrying someone like you would soften my image. Kind. Polished. No scandals. You were perfect on paper. Perfect. Paper. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. He kept talking. Kept trying to fix it with words that only made it worse. But I grew to love you, Olivia. It stopped being a contract a long time ago. I swear. And I stared at the man I thought I knew. The man I'd built my entire world around, and all I could see was a stranger. He didn't marry me because he loved me. He married me because I was good for business. Everything I had given, every sacrifice, every moment I thought was real, was built on a lie. And in that moment I knew, whatever love he thought he felt for me now didn't matter. Because the woman he lied to, she was gone. And something else, something stronger, had taken her place. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the bed in the silk nightgown Nathan had gifted me for our first anniversary, his initials embroidered on the sleeve, staring at the wall like it held the answers to a life I didn't recognize anymore. My wedding ring felt heavier than usual, like it knew something I didn't. And the silence? It was louder than the scream trapped in my throat. Nathan had gone to bed like nothing had happened. Like admitting our marriage started as a contract wasn't enough to unravel everything between us. I heard him snoring softly like guilt didn't touch him. Like betrayal didn't have weight. But I felt it. I felt it like a stone sitting on my chest. The next morning I got up before him. I stood in the bathroom staring at my reflection. My eyes were bloodshot. My lips dry. I looked older. Not because of time, but because of truth. Because I realized in that moment that everything I thought I had wasn't mine. Not the house. Not the marriage. Not even the man sleeping in our bed. I walked downstairs in silence, brewed coffee I couldn't stomach, and sat at the kitchen island with the contract laid out in front of me. I read it line by line. Each paragraph felt like a dagger, spelled out in lawyer speak and numbers. He had offered incentives, bonuses, even a clause about what would happen if I broke it early. There were financial penalties, confidentiality agreements, things that made it crystal clear. He never thought I'd find out. I called my best friend Grace. When she answered, I didn't even say hello. I just whispered, it was all fake. She didn't ask what I meant. He came over. 15 minutes later, she was standing in my foyer, arms open, eyes wide with worry. I collapsed into her arms. She didn't say, I told you so. She didn't remind me of the little red flags I had ignored. How Nathan had always been just a little too perfect, how his parents treated me like a polished accessory instead of a person. Instead, she sat with me on the floor like we were 16 again, flipping through those papers like we were planning revenge over broken hearts and summer dreams. You need to see a lawyer, she said. I nodded. But it wasn't the legal battle I was thinking about. It was the emotional one. Because how do you confront someone you loved, someone you thought loved you back, when everything he said was carefully constructed? How do you trust anything after that? Nathan tried to talk to me the next day. He brought flowers like petals could cover betrayal. He made breakfast like burnt eggs, and forced smiles could rewrite the contract I never signed with intention. I didn't know I'd fall for you, he said again. But that's not how love works. You don't get to lie your way into someone's life and then beg for forgiveness just because the lie started to feel good. I told him I needed space. He gave it to me, physically. But emotionally, he hovered, texted, left me notes on the bathroom mirror like we were in some rom-com where love triumphs over manipulation. Only this wasn't a movie. This was my life. My heart. My dignity. And I wasn't the woman who was going to crumble under it. So I started digging. I went back to the beginning. To the week before our wedding. I searched emails, calendars, anything that could show me where the hell that contract came from. And then I found it. A copy of the guest list for our rehearsal dinner, with a name I didn't recognize. Randall H. Benton. Attorney at law. I remembered the man. Middle-aged. Too friendly. Said he was a cousin on Nathan's side. I remembered him pulling me aside for a few quick forms the venue needed signed for insurance. I was distracted, excited, buzzing on champagne and love. I had signed the marriage contract. Just not the one I thought I was signing. My stomach turned. I printed everything. Highlighted details. Circled names. And for the first time in days I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt anymore, but because I realized something important. He thought he had picked the perfect woman for the image. But he underestimated the woman behind the image. I didn't confront him that night. Instead, I watched him. Watched how he kissed me on the cheek like a dutiful husband. Watched how he smiled over dinner and pretended to listen while scrolling through his phone. Watched how he tucked me into bed like I was a prized possession, not a woman with fire in her eyes. Because I wasn't the same Olivia anymore. He married a woman who believed in fairy tales. Who believed that if you gave love, you'd get it back. He didn't realize that love, real love, comes with sharp edges when it's betrayed. I wanted him to feel what I felt. Not just pain, but doubt. Confusion. Powerlessness. So I played the game. I let him think I believed him. That I forgave him. That I was grateful to be chosen, even if it started off wrong. I let him rebuild his little illusion one sweet lie at a time. But behind the scenes, I was documenting everything. Every message. Every financial transfer. Every clause in the contract he never expected me to read. I set up a separate email. Opened a secret bank account. And I found a lawyer. One who had no ties to his world. Her name was Jenna Morales, and she looked at the prenup and said without hesitation, "This is fraud." The contract was legal on paper, but unethical to the bone. He tricked me. Manipulated me. Gaslit me into signing something under false pretenses. And I wasn't the first, as he had done it before. There was another woman. Not as public. Not as polished. But the same pattern. Same rushed romance. Same sudden proposal. That marriage lasted 8 months. She disappeared from his life, and his online history like a shadow wiped clean. But I found her. Her name was Lily. And when I met her in a little diner off Peachtree Street, she looked like someone who had been holding in a scream for years. "Don't let him do to you what he did to me," she said. So I didn't. Instead I planned. Jenna and I created a case. Fraud, misrepresentation, emotional distress. The works. But it wasn't just about court. It wasn't just about money. It was about exposure. I started recording my conversations with Nathan. Nothing illegal, just a woman protecting herself in her own home. And as I gathered evidence, I started seeing the cracks in his charm. He talked about me like I was property. "I invested in Olivia," he said once on a call with his business partner. "She's doing her part. Makes me look like a saint." I wasn't angry anymore. I was strategic. The final straw came on a Thursday afternoon. I overheard a conversation between Nathan and his mother, Vivian, a woman who wore pearls like armor and called me a good face for the family. "She's asking too many questions," Vivian said. "If she finds out more, it could ruin the deal." Nathan laughed. "Don't worry. She's still playing house." That night I set the plan in motion. I called a friend from the nonprofit world, someone who worked in journalism. I gave her the story, the recordings, the documents. I told her everything. Not just for me, but for every woman who's been made to feel like an accessory in her own life. And then I waited. For the chaos. For the collapse. For the storm I had built brick by brick. Because when a woman rebuilds herself in silence, she doesn't come back soft. He comes back sharper than ever. And Nathan was about to learn what it meant to marry a woman he thought was weak. The story dropped on a Monday morning. I was sitting at the breakfast table, pretending to scroll mindlessly through my phone while Nathan stirred his coffee and rehearsed the numbers for his board meeting. He kissed me on the forehead as usual, grabbed his briefcase and walked out the door like he owned the world. By the time he reached his office, the world no longer belonged to him. The article was everywhere. Front page of the Atlanta Tribune, splashed across Twitter, circulating through finance circles on LinkedIn. Old money, dirty contracts. The woman behind the paper marriage. There was a photo of us from our wedding day. I was smiling like I'd just stepped into a dream. Nathan looked proud. Polished. Powerful. Now he looked like a con. The article laid everything out. How he used marriage to clean up his image, secure investments, and sell the illusion of stability to his clients and shareholders. It mentioned Lily. It quoted Jenna. And most importantly, it named names. Nathan Caldwell was exposed, not just to the public but to the very people he tried so hard to impress. His phone must have exploded before he even stepped into the boardroom. Because 3 hours later I got a call from his assistant. "Mrs. Caldwell," she stammered, "Mr. Caldwell is requesting you come to the office immediately." I let the silence hang for a moment. Then I said, "Tell him I'm busy. Maybe he can try sending a contract next time." I hung up. By the end of the day he was placed on indefinite leave from the investment firm he co-founded. Investors began pulling out of his projects. And a whisper campaign turned into full-blown scandal as more people came forward. Women he had dated, assistants he had belittled, interns he'd manipulated. The perfect man had cracks. And now everyone could see them. But the real confrontation hadn't happened yet. That came later when he came home. He burst through the door like a hurricane in a silk tie. His eyes were wild, his voice tight with panic. "What did you do?" he demanded. I stayed calm. I told the truth. He threw the article on the table. "You ruined everything. My reputation, my company." "You ruined yourself," I said quietly. All I did was open the door. He started pacing, running his hands through his hair. "You think this is justice? You think this makes you powerful?" "No," I said, standing up. "I know it does." He glared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Because the woman he married, the one who cried at wedding vows and melted at soft kisses, was gone. In her place stood someone who didn't break when she was betrayed. Someone who didn't crumble under deception. Someone who rose. "I loved you," he said finally, voice cracking. I nodded slowly. "No, you needed me. There's a difference." He reached for me again like old times. Like maybe his touch could rewrite the past. I stepped back. "It's over, Nathan." "What are you going to do?" he asked. "Leave? Take half of everything?" "No," I said, eyes steady. "I'm taking back all of me." That night I packed what I needed. I walked out of the house we once called home not as a woman broken, but as a woman reborn. I had no interest in revenge that burned everything down. I wanted him to live in the ashes. To feel the weight of what he'd lost, every single day. To see my name attached to something real, while his became a footnote in a scandal. I moved in with Grace the same night I walked out on Nathan. Her place was a small loft downtown, not fancy like the mansion I had just left behind, but it felt like home the second I stepped in. There were no cold stares or staged perfection. Just mismatched pillows, laughter in the walls, and the smell of takeout and nail polish remover. "I knew something was off," she said, handing me a glass of wine. "I just didn't know it was this bad." I nodded. I couldn't even cry. I was exhausted, but more than anything I was focused. The kind of focus that comes after betrayal, after you've hit the bottom and realize there's only one way left. Up. The press couldn't get enough of the scandal. My inbox filled with media requests. Journalists wanted my side. Talk shows wanted me to speak. I ignored them all, until I got a message from a women's empowerment podcast I admired. They didn't want a headline. They wanted my voice. So I told my story on my terms. No tears. No rage. Just the truth. I spoke about manipulation dressed as romance. About how power can hide behind sweet smiles and perfect dinners. About rebuilding after being used and how loving someone should never mean losing yourself. The episode went viral. Not because I was anyone special, but because so many women saw themselves in me. My DMs flooded with messages from strangers. "You just told my story. I thought I was the only one. You made me feel seen." Somehow, by surviving what Nathan did, I had given other women permission to stop apologizing for their pain. That's when everything started changing. A publishing company reached out to offer me a book deal. They wanted me to expand on my experience, turn my heartbreak into healing for others. I said yes. Then a major nonprofit I'd admired since college offered me a seat on their board. They'd been following my advocacy work for years. They called me inspiring. That word used to feel too big for me, but now it fit like armor. Meanwhile, Nathan's life crumbled in slow motion. His firm collapsed under the weight of investigation. Clients sued. Partners cut ties. His name became synonymous with deceit, a cautionary tale in business schools and boardrooms. And through it all he watched me rise. From podcasts to panels to national interviews, I became the face of a movement. I didn't ask for it. I didn't plan it. But life has a way of turning pain into purpose when you stop pretending you're not hurt. One afternoon, almost a year after I left, I ran into him. It was at a charity event I was speaking at, ironically hosted in the same hotel where we had our wedding reception. He looked thinner. Tired. Like life had stopped being kind to him. "Olivia," he said as if my name still belonged to him. I turned slowly. "Nathan." "I've been watching everything you've done," he said, hands stuffed in his pockets. "You're everywhere." I smiled politely. "Funny. That's what you wanted for yourself, remember?" "I didn't think it would end like this," he murmured. "I didn't think you'd become this." He meant it as a compliment. Maybe even a regret. But I took it as proof that he never truly knew me at all. "I was always this," I said. "You just didn't see it." He looked down and for a moment I saw the man I once believed in. But I didn't pity him. Not anymore. I walked away from that conversation lighter than I'd felt in years. Because closure isn't something you get from the person who hurt you. It's something you give yourself, when you finally realize they never had the power to define you. The irony is, the version of me Nathan tried to manufacture, the quiet, polished, controllable wife, was never who I was meant to be. I wasn't born to be a shadow. I wasn't created to be a contract. I was born with a voice. And now that I had finally learned to use it, I wasn't about to let anyone silence me again. The book came out 9 months after our divorce was finalized. It was called The Love Contract: Rebuilding After Betrayal. I didn't just tell my story, I told the stories of other women who had been manipulated, coerced, tricked into believing love came with terms and conditions. It climbed the bestseller list within weeks. Nathan? He tried to sue. Claimed defamation. His lawyers sent letters. But everything I'd said was backed up with documentation. Emails, bank records, the very prenup he had tried to bury. His threats fizzled like wet matches. I was untouchable. With the book's success, I started a foundation for women escaping manipulative marriages and financial abuse. I named it the Olivia Grace Project, after myself and the best friend who never left my side. We provided legal aid, housing grants, therapy scholarships, real tools for women to take their lives back. Every time a survivor wrote to say, "You helped me leave," I felt something shift in me. A version of myself, small, scared, silenced, was healing alongside them. And I finally understood. What Nathan did to me wasn't the end of my story. It was just the turning point. Months later, I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. It was from Nathan. He apologized, not just for what he did but for who he was. He wrote that losing everything made him realize he never truly had anything. That love isn't a strategy or a tool. It's real. And he didn't deserve it. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to anymore. Forgiveness doesn't always mean inviting someone back in. Sometimes, it just means setting yourself free from their hold. My life is simple now but beautiful. I live in a modest home filled with books and sun. I travel to speak at women's conferences and high schools. I mentor survivors and advocate for policy reform. I love again not because I need to but because I choose to. This time on my terms. And when people ask me how I moved on, how I turned betrayal into power, I say this. You don't have to become bitter to get better. You just have to stop waiting for someone else to save you. Sometimes the person you've been waiting for is you. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us tell more powerful stories that uplift and inspire those still searching for their strength.